Hello, everybody, and welcome to In the Stars with Eli Gomez, and I am your host, Eli Gomez. Today, I have a very special guest on the episode, and her name is Laurie Rivers. She is my astrology teacher, as well as one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. Now, if you're joining me from her podcast in the Awake Space, we welcome you over here. I'm glad to see that you all want to see what I'm doing over here. And if you're a returning listener, I also welcome you back. You know, I realized the other day that even though most of my listeners are college students, I actually have quite a few listeners who are age 60 and over. I thought that was so fascinating to me. And I also have listeners in 3 different countries. Like, I know that sounds like a very small number, but like, wow, like it's magic to my Sagittarius sun and moon, and that is just so wild to me. And I'm also very grateful for that, because without you all, there is no In the Stars with Eli Gomez. So I am very grateful for each and every single one of you who helped me to make this happen. Now, without further ado, here is Laurie Rivers. All right, I am here now with one of my greatest teachers I have encountered in my life, Laurie Rivers. This is a woman who teaches me astrology, y'all. She's the host of the Awake Space Astrology podcast and founder of Woke Astrology. She has over 3 decades of experience in the field, and I am very glad to have her on the podcast. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, Eli. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So, before we get started in here, how did you find astrology? Or how did it find you?
So, back in 1995, my sister-in-law had the sun sign astrology book. I can't remember who it's by now, but anyway, it's a popular one. And I had noticed that every single astrology book I'd ever looked at had me either as a Cancer or a Leo, and I kind of identified both directions a little bit from pop astrology, you know. And life was a little harsh at the time, and I was seeking answers where psychology was doing us dirty because it sucked in the 90s. And I ended up on a message board owned by the late, great Jonathan Caner out of the United Kingdom. And I put in, this was my message: am I a Cancer or a Leo? Tell me. And everybody came back with all these technical answers, and I put up my birthday, and they're like, well, you could be a Cancer or a Leo. And I'm like, what the hell? Which, honestly, if somebody just would have looked up the year I was born, there's no way I could have been a Leo with that birthday, but I digress. And a man named William Mason, who was from Australia, and I was in the country of Bahrain. Okay. He private messaged me and said, I'll do your chart. And I was like, oh, okay. Not realizing what a gift that was. And he sent me, the next week, he sent me a 20-page email. And I was freaked out because he saw stuff that I had never spoken about with anybody. And it wasn't exactly trauma stuff. It was stupid, quirky little things like, do you have perfect pitch? Yes. How can you know that? You know, can you talk to animals? Not something I regularly tell people, you know. How did he know? And so anyway, at the bottom of that email is, I would love to teach you astrology. If anybody had a chart that was born to do this, it is you. And I came back with, well, I don't know how you know this crap. That was my exact words. I don't know. Very Cancerian. I don't know how you know this crap, but I'm going to figure it out and prove it wrong. This is God. There has to be chicanery involved. I'm a rational, logical person. I don't do superstitious mumbo jumbo. And he goes, neither do I. He worked, you know, for, Oracle. He was a computer software architect. So he's like, no, it's math, honey. I still don't trust math. Math can be used to lie as much as the next language.
Yeah, just tell that to economics.
I'm going to point out that astrology is more accurate than economics 90% of the time, and economics would have blown up the laboratory every single time. Just saying. So, but yeah, that's how I became that's how astrology got me. The more I studied it, and I didn't have books, he would send me lessons because in Bahrain, I couldn't find any books in English on it. There weren't bookstores that, there was one thrift store I could get like The Hunt for Red October in, or something, old James Patterson and old Tom Clancy novels, things like that, but no astrology books. So I literally studied like you would have in medieval times at the foot of a mentor over email, though. So it was an interesting
How was
ride.
that?
Honestly, I think it's what made me a really good astrologer because he had me do a lot of observation exercises. So, and he didn't let me intuit because I'm naturally intuitive and I didn't necessarily want to admit that when I was young. So I would intuit a chart and he'd be like, "That's great, psychic girl. Now do the astrology. I want to see the math." And I'd be like, "No." So.
It's like, took me back to 8th grade when I did geometry and, you had to do all the proofs. Prove that a triangle is a triangle. I was like, oh my God. Can't you just look at it and know that it's a triangle? But yeah.
Nope, you got to be able to explain it. So
that's one of the hardest things to do as an astrologer is being like, you can look at something and be like, yep, that's mold. But once you have to really just sit down and prove, why is it that when you look at that chart, you see mold?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And not every astrologer is going to see mold.
Right. Some may see heavy rainfall. It's moisture.
Extra moisture. Yeah. And not every astrologer is going to do mundane because mundane is getting a little bit of a resurgence thanks to social media. But when I was learning, you never admitted learning mundane astrology at all. There's still astrologers my age and older who will be like, it's wish casting, it's superstitious. And I'm like, no, there's actual rules. It's like data science. And there'll be astrologers who say, oh, it's not like data science. It has a soul. I'm like, data science has a soul too. I'm like, you just have to know what you're looking at. You're interpreting sets of data.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So
it really is.
Yeah. So there's natal astrology and then there's mundane and esoteric and
esoteric's a fun one.
That's my favorite.
That's my favorite too.
It's my speciality. Yeah, I haven't even got to be able to teach esoteric yet. I've been laying foundations, but 2025 I'm going to be teaching more esoteric.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of research and stuff on esoteric recently, and I really do feel called to that, even though it's one of those specific niches in astrology that not very many people are going to come to you specifically for, because what they're going to want to know is, when are they getting their paycheck, how much it's going to be, are they going to find a partner in crime, also known as a love interest or hookup or whatever, and then when they're going to get laid, when they're going to get paid. And so it's just kind of unfortunate that is how it is, because esoteric astrology is really where all the really good shit is. And
you learn how to incorporate it into readings when you get people who come to you for more than the when do I get laid and when do I get paid. And that is bread and butter. And if you think about it, we're all asking that question. I used to be way above that as a young professional. I'm like, I can open the universe to you. Why are you asking when you're going to get laid and when you're going to get paid? And then I'd hit my tarot cards with, does he like me? I'd be like, well, wait a minute. Maybe I too, have hormones that are revving. Maybe I too like to know when I'm getting paid. And so I kind of got off my high horse from that a little bit, but you can sprinkle it in. You learn how to sprinkle it in your interpretations, and that's fun.
Yeah, I've learned
I'm
that
not
with
surprised you're
clients.
into it.
Yeah, I've learned with specific clients, you can kind of tell when someone's a little bit more ready to and open to that kind of stuff. Like, I've had one client that was just like, I just want business stuff. I just want to get what I want to get done and be on out of here. And then I've had other ones that'll be like asking me really good, informed
Mm-hmm.
questions. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
you're ready for me to go a little bit deeper. We're going to go there.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
that's the thing about a reading. What you put into it, you're going to get out of it. The astrologer, if they're well trained and they're well
Mm-hmm.
experienced, they're going to kind of just know when you are able to hear and actually listen
Mm-hmm.
to deeper and
Mm-hmm.
more substantial information that
Mm-hmm.
may be more than
Absolutely.
when you're going to get laid, when you're going to get paid. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be completely
Mm-hmm.
honest, when I don't know about you, but when I'm doing readings, when someone says, "Hey, when am I going to find a new job or am I going to find this?" those are
Mm-hmm.
usually pretty simple. Like you can kind of see, "Hey,
The
there's going to be a good opportunity that's coming up to you next July.
mm-hmm.
You might want
Mm-hmm.
to look into that." Or be like,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, no, right now you really just need to kind of get through this 2 week rough patch, but then there's going to be a really good carrot right there,
Yep.
and it's going to just be
Yep.
handed to you, and
Mm-hmm.
you'll take it. It's good."
Absolutely.
And so
Mm-hmm.
it's really simple to kind of see that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like that's just the surface. Once you get
Mm-hmm.
down to the really deep as to like, why is it that you're looking for this new job? Why is it that you're
Right.
wanting?
What
That's where the
pattern do
real
you need
magic
to
is.
disrupt or to, yeah, what pattern do you need to enhance or disrupt?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because are you going to leave that job for a job that's equally distasteful? Is it going to be the
Exactly.
same? Are you still going to overgive and not get compensated enough, et cetera, et cetera?
Mm-hmm.
Same in relationships, just hopping people doesn't mean you can different face same relationship, or the opposite, and the opposite isn't always better.
Mm-mm.
And so, but I have enough skin in the game that most of my clients are people who they've been working on actualization, or they've had a spiritual awakening, or um, even my young ones, people are coming a little more ready.
Yeah.
That also comes from knowing how to message what you do too, because when I was starting out, there was the classified ads, that's how we marketed.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Well, there still are. I have seen some
mm-hmm,
classified ads for psychic readings and
mm-hmm,
astrologers, but unfortunately now there's kind of this stigma with classified. Like if you're going to classified, that means you may not be really good at what you're doing because there's the internet, and if you're not getting done on it, like there's just
mm-hmm.
that little stigma, especially in my generation, that like you never go to classified ads. Like that's just something that I've
Although I
observed.
would say if it's a psychic, they're probably older and have a lot of experience.
Now that
So
is true. Yeah.
they may not be good at using the internet, and they might be somebody worth seeing.
Yeah. Because believe it or not,
There's some
yeah.
older ones out there who fame doesn't not mean you're good at it.
Oh, right.
You know.
Exactly. That's something that I learned when entering
Mm-hmm.
the field of astrology, because I found
Mm-hmm.
you back when you had like maybe 60,000 followers on TikTok. I know for you, you're like, that's such a big deal. And I'm like, what? But then you got what's her name? Channy Nicholas with like 4 million. But that is true. I do not
I did
read
not
at
get it.
all the
Yeah.
same way she does. And I would say that you resonated with me, like the words that you
Mm-hmm.
said, the kind of content that you put, that
Mm-hmm.
in a way that some of these 10 million follower people did not. And so, in a way, you are right. That is, I'm not even gonna say in a way, like you just are right in that, is that there is not really such a thing as fame equals expertise,
No,
especially
it
in
doesn't.
astrology.
Mm-mm. On anything, because
Yeah.
marketing is its own thing. And if I was willing to be a little more fluffy bunny, I could have a much bigger audience. Also, if TikTok hadn't choked me, like it did for 18 months,
I remember
and it
that.
did. Yeah. In fact, I would write them little emails going, I've been observing my followers per day versus the follower count. This is not equaling either. The math is not mathing. What's going on? And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, I'd go up a little bit.
Yeah. And don't get you
And I'd be
started
like,
on that blue
mm-hmm.
check mark situation.
They're never going to give me a blue check mark.
Well, honestly, at this point, does it even really matter?
So we'll see.
Yeah.
I
haven't
It's
I
a
haven't
little
been too
interesting.
involved in the whole TikTok thing because that's not a platform that I am on as much.
Me
Honestly,
either lately.
yeah.
I've been in the
Well,
Patreon.
oh yeah, I am definitely more active on Patreon. I know you're not super active on Instagram. I've spent a lot of time on there. But
I hate
my
Zuckerberg
yeah, Brooklyn's
with
trying
a
to get me
passion.
to do a Facebook, and I'm like, I don't really want to do that, but if you're gonna be in charge of it, I guess I don't really care because I just don't want to have to do a whole new platform. But she's like, oh no, you can just connect. I'm like, I'm just gonna leave that to you, baby
Well,
girl,
for
because yeah,
ads, if you're going to do ads and stuff, probably.
I'm not really into that right now. So
Yeah. I don't know. I hate Zuckerberg with a passion.
Same.
Because Facebook is the AOL of social media. And he screwed up Instagram too. Instagram was way better before he bought it up. But, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I've not really been paying too much attention to the litigation with TikTok, but it is definitely interesting whenever I do hear information about it. I'm like, oh, that's very out of the ordinary, because if that was an American company, they would not, who may be doing worse things with our information that
they didn't care that Elon got 44 billion from the Saudis,
right?
When they jail people for 30 years for a singular tweet. I'm like, really? There's not an interference in the First Amendment with Twitter or X or whatever it's called. I dead name it.
Yeah. I will disrespect Elon any day, and I will do it for free.
He can kiss my IQ.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, one of the many reasons to study under me.
Yes, of course.
The irreverence.
Yes. We love those little... I live for a good Laurie quote. I have a book of Laurie quotes. I have a journal. I remember, yeah, actually, believe it or not, you were doing a live in 2023. December 23rd, you were on a live in 2023, and you said you're replying to one of the comments that were being scrolled, and they were essentially demanding you to give them a reading based off their big three. And you were like, I'm not God. I can't give you shit. And so I was like, that's going in there. That's going to be the first one. That's a sign.
Oh, that might have been somebody asking me to give them hope.
Oh, well, maybe it was that. Because I don't write context.
Because that's my standard reply to somebody saying, give me hope. And I will say, I'm not God. I can't give you that. For
really?
big three.
I didn't know that was a standard reply for you.
It is. It is, because I get really annoyed when people put their emotional well-being into my hands. That's not my job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not. I can't make you feel anything. I really would love to refer people to either a therapist or a psychology class. You cannot put your hope in an individual. No matter if they have a following, don't have, you can't. You have to have hope in yourself. Find it. No, the thing with the big three is asking somebody about their big three is like saying, I was born in America, in Oregon, and from Gladstone. That tells you something. Yeah. But that's about as much information as it actually gives you compared to the whole.
Yeah, because there's only so many combinations of big threes that you have. When you have not only all the 12 house cusp, you have the other planets too, that makes it so individualized for a specific person. Two people can be born on the same day. There was somebody who I was reading for who was born about 11 days after me, but because my planets, most of my personal planets were retrograde, theirs were direct, because in that 11-day period that there was a lot of transition. However, they were each around the same degree that they were in my chart. However, they had a different rising sign. Their whole way they operate is completely different. And that is something that a lot of people don't understand, that you can have the same places as somebody else and you will express them differently. It will still be within a similar scope of a similar theme, but it's going to still be different. Just because someone is like Hitler or Trump or somebody who you may not identify in any way, shape, or form or want to be associated with, and you may have similar places, does not mean that you are.
Doesn't mean you're going to be like them. No. Not at all.
Do you know how many Leo risings I know? And most of them are actually really cool people.
Yeah, my mom's a Leo rising with Pluto on the ascendant. Just don't piss her off.
Yeah.
She's all good. She's Tinkerbell on steroids when she's angry. And as she'll say, I don't see myself. She's 4'10" now. She used to be 4'11", but she's 77. And she's this tiny, petite little thing. But she does not see herself as small, nor does she act like it. There's lots of really good, warm-hearted, generous people with those same placements. Okay. So, and you can be born within a minute of each other and have very different personalities. I read for a set of twins, and they happen to be like almost mirror images of one another. And so one of them is very corporate, one of them is very artistic. And I've told them, you can't read with me individually. You both have to be in the reading, because I'll be like, is one of you going to change jobs? And the other one's like, God, I hope not. I hope I'm not getting another promotion. And the other one's like, well, I really don't like my job and I am thinking about maybe, and I'm like, no, you both come to the reading, because who knows? And it's invariably, I'll pick one and I'll save something and nope, it's the other one. It's trippy. It's like,
yeah.
And they're literally a minute apart. Very cool.
Yeah. I would say, though, with the reason why I find it so cool to read for twins charts, especially the ones that are so close, maybe 2 minutes apart, those are so fun to read for, because it literally shows you the scope of probability of transits. You can see they are. I don't want to call them study tools, because they're people, but they are very good to observe for astrologers who are. Yeah, they're very cool.
You're
to
all
observe.
our science experiments.
Yeah, to an astrologer, everyone is. Yeah.
So when I was a kid, I used to do go figure. I would do psychological experiments on my family members.
Oh, I would too.
And my mom would get really mad at me. Laurie, human beings are not science experiments. I'm like, kind of are.
I used to do that on my friends in middle school, because I wanted to experiment with, because I was learning that, if I do this, what's going to happen kind of thing. And and even if I didn't mean a single thing that I was doing, I was just like, I wonder what would happen if I pulled this card. And so there was this one day I was, okay, so what I'm about to say, I haven't actually admitted to this friend that this is what happened. So this is bombshell information. And
tea is spilling hot.
Yeah, she won't care anymore, but because it was so minuscule. But I was like, okay, so this friendship's getting a little boring right now. And so I wonder what would happen if I spice up the tea and add a little bit of drama. And so what I did is I was like, I'm going to pretend to get really mad at her for no reason and then just storm off. And I'm going to see what happens from there. And I made up some stupid reason that had no basis in any reality, but it didn't have to, because I was just experimenting. So I was just like, hey, I wonder what would happen if this happened. Well, that was just a little 30-minute conflict, but I was like, okay. So that was when A, I learned I was a bad liar, and B, I learned, because she was like, come on now. Like, full well that I wouldn't do that. And also, this doesn't seem genuine. And so I was like,
oh, that's funny.
So I learned I was a bad liar. A good one if there is a really good incentive involved, whether it means I'm covering for myself or
Or a friend.
someone who I am very, very close to. But when it just comes to made up situations, I'm a terrible liar. I'm like, because there's
I
no
can't.
like, yeah. And so that was what I got out of
I'm
that.
like
And
an
so
elf. In elven lore, an elf cannot lie, but they can speak around the subject matters.
oh, I'm very good at that.
And there has to be like an element of truth. I
Yeah.
can do that, but I'm not good at it, so I try to avoid it.
Yeah.
But,
See,
yeah.
the best kind of deceptive, I don't really want to call it deceptive, but it is. The best kind of deceptive behavior I'm good at is trying to lie by omission. So I am so good at just saying, yep, this happened, but then I will leave out the whole context. But then again, I end up telling on myself too, because I'm like, I can't like sit on that with my conscience. But it's just still, yeah.
I understand that. Yes, I resonate
I'm like,
there.
I want to do good things in the world. I don't want to sit here and use this ability against people. So
No, and life's short. You don't want to
that
make
is
that
true.
kind of drama for yourself,
Oh, for sure.
But people are still science experiments.
Oh, always.
So that's what I love about astrology is as much as I learn about other human beings and how other human beings really, there's always a takeaway for myself. I usually find the themes of the reading are probably something I need as well that day, and I may not have thought I needed it that day, but go in, come out and be like, okay, universe, I see you.
Yeah,
So,
I've experienced that too.
yeah.
I'll
That's
often
a cool thing.
tell my clients, I'll be like, "Hey, I know you're not gonna want to hear this right now, but I promise you, when you look back at the recording, you're gonna be like, I really needed that." And I'll also say, I also need this today too, if it makes you feel any better, because I always try to bring in that personal element too, because I've noticed that it's like with me and with other people, when you kind of bring yourself down a little bit from being the expert to just being another human at times, people are
Yeah,
going to want to
that's
hear
really
more of what
important.
you have to say.
I think it's really
Yeah.
important too. And this is something I tell to any of the astrologers that I'm teaching or mentoring, apprenticing, whatever I've been doing with them, is because people don't understand astrology at the same level, usually, who are clients. And it's always a privilege when they do come to us as a reader when they do. But the average person sees us as magic, okay, or holding some kind of authority or power. And it's really important to take that seriously and not to misuse it. And because it is a power dynamic as an expert, but to then humanize ourselves and let people see that, and that works for 90% of your clients. Some of your clients don't want to see you as human. They like you being the mystic. They like you being the wizard. But I used to before every reading, because people will come in from TikTok, go, "Oh my God, I'm getting to meet you." And I'd be like, I poop.
Yeah.
Literally, first thing out of my mouth. And they'd be like, "What?" And I'd be like Mr. Rogers said, everybody's poops. And I would just do that to get it out of the way. I don't say that as much anymore, but I was very uncomfortable with that reaction towards me anyway. Like, oh, I know. Please don't do that.
Yeah.
I am a human. But yeah, we do have an ethical responsibility to not necessarily lower ourselves, but to humanize ourselves so people understand there's a fallibility there
Right.
that is
Yeah.
available.
Yes, definitely. Even though there is that referent power there, it is not going to be received. The message that you're trying to say is not going to be received the same way if you are trying to be like, yes, you are subjected to me, because I'm the
Right.
wizard or I'm, whatever.
Right.
It's going to be more, it's going to receive better if you're like, yes, I
Well, you're
also
going to
needed to hear
empower
this
people.
message too. Yeah. And so it's very important that a good reader recognizes that. And unfortunately, I don't see a lot of that on TikTok. It's like, Oh, there's a lot of really negative readers I've noticed on there, and they
That's
will
actually
show it
really
in
common in
their
general.
video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's a lot of in general, and this has been my whole career. I started reading professionally in 1998,
That was
and
only a few
from the
years ago.
beginning. Right. My 30th year of being an astrologer is this year, 2025. Though I started my studies
Yeah, what
30
an
years ago.
accomplishment. Yeah.
Right? I didn't think I'd live this long, man. I've survived a lot of Pluto transits.
You really did.
Successfully. Woo! It was touch and go on a few of us. But even when I was starting, I would have clients come and say, well, this other astrologer said I was a hot mess, or I would be forever broken, or healing it wasn't possible. And I would be absolutely gutted hearing their stories. And I'd be like, no, that's not how astrology works. And let me show you your route to healing. Here are some suggestions. This might work better for you. No, you're not a hot mess. There's no bad placements. There's bad astrologers, but there's no bad placements. That's a very fixed viewpoint. I'm a progressive evolutionary astrologer. I look at the pathway forward. Back then nobody called it progressive. That's my addition, but it was evolutionary astrology because I studied with Jeffrey Wolf Green and other cool people. And I have some cool stories. But
I've seen a couple of his workshops. I always love it when he's like, yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. And he does it rhetorically because it's a yes, but he'll be like, he does that too. That's a rhetorical shot.
Right.
I always love it. Yeah.
It was cool. He was a cool guy to study under. But I actually got just like one-on-one time with him because we both stepped outside to take a break. It was cool. It was neat. But very chilled. But just the amount of damage a bad reader can do. And that's why, I'm always harping on the stuff I'm harping on when I'm teaching, because I saw the damage and I don't want to be responsible for that kind of damage. And so anytime people talk in a fixed perspective or a destiny, perceptive without giving somebody, access to their agency, that's a problem. And that's what I really loved about your perspective from the beginning. As bright as you are and as smart and quick as you are, it would be very easy for a young person to have a great amount of hubris, because I have been a young person with hubris. And sure, we all have that, but your mindful approach, your dedication to the study and the subject matter, so that you are not only of service and helping other people, but also representing astrology at the best of your capacity. That really caught my attention early on when you joined the Awake Space. And I really love watching you grow, because I think you're going to be I think you already are a really good astrologer, and I don't promote slouches, it's like, you're really good. But I think, with anything, experience adds to that. And I think, 30, when you're at your 30-year mark, you'll be that cool guy other people wish they were. And that'll be neat. You'll be like a Jeffrey Wolf Green or a Robert Hand or Joanne Wickenburg. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, those people are pretty cool. But yes, on a different note, what are some kind of things that you're doing right now in your astrology career? So kind of like, where can people find you? What kind of activities are you doing?
Oh, gosh. What am I not doing? Besides the podcast, the Awake Space Astrology podcast, which is weekly and is kind of it's a blend between current events and then how you can move through the energy. I could try to give as much uplifting information as possible. Very busy in the Patreon this year at the Awake Space. Lots of practical information. So classes on applied astrology. So even if people don't want to be astrologers, but they can pull up an astrology chart. I'll be teaching people how to find their side hustle or their business by using their astrology, how to market using their astrology. And then I'm going to be doing professional development for people who are in small micro businesses, service-oriented businesses, and that includes metaphysical businesses, helping people grow and change. So lots of education this year. So on top of everything else, because I have a Sagittarius Mars. All the things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You do also write the Awake Space or the Awake Space magazine. So tell us a little bit more about that.
You've got an article this one. The Awake Space Astrology magazine is the magazine I wish I could subscribe to. So because there's dedicated articles to learning. So like if I could have had this as a young astrologer, I would have been thrilled. So like there's astrology school where I take apart a planet or a house or something and we go through succession. There's articles on metaphysics as well, using energy work, whether it's what shadow work actually is, how not to get stuck in it. That was one of my favorites, how to hold your consciousness, as well as mundane predictions. People love that. It's like what's going to happen in these 2.5 day periods when we're looking at lunations, and then horoscopes, whether people want to be astrologers or not, which are a little spooky and a little accurate. Those on the personal level, the spooky part isn't because it's scary, but just because it is accurate.
It's just not something that people would expect to be super accurate. It's just kind of like with the cultural connotation of astrology. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. People are like, holy shit, that was right. I rate them thematically so that the theme, it's still a general thing. And then there's, an explainer page on how to read the horoscope. So it is accurate. But the articles, like your article coming in, that'll probably be in February. By the time this is out, it will already have come out. But December, January is one issue because the transits were transiting and I couldn't write until yesterday. Yeah, no, because we had Mercury in opposition to Jupiter squaring Saturn in a T-square. Well, that T-square was sitting on my Venus, which is in Gemini. And I have a Mercury ruled chart. So until it started to separate just today, there was no writing. I tried. I never get writer's block. I can write with half dead and half asleep, but it was just like, I ain't got nothing. And I've learned not to push that. That's why I encouraged you not to hustle, not to. We don't have to be successful and sustainable. That's a lie of the industrial mindset.
The idea that hustling and competition breeds creativity is an absolute lie. If anything, it stifles it because it takes all the fun out of the creativity. Yes,
it does.
I will say a little conflict does bring creativity, but if it's healthy.
Friction.
If it's
friction friction,
but not intentional butting of heads because you want to see who's going to win the fight. That is not going to bring creativity by any means. And
there's this dude out there who I live rent free in his head, and he makes great claims. And notice I don't mention his name. Yeah. It's funny. People will know who it is, and I don't see him as competition. So, oh no, honey, we are not. He does. He went after Chris Brennan, for God's sake. I'm like, are you kidding?
Yeah. That was ridiculous. I'm like, I will say, Chris Brennan does have he's a really good historian. So, like
Chris Brennan's amazing, and he was a pioneer online, bringing astrology to people. Just like Susan Miller, she's the original goddess online. I say celebrate everybody for what they do well.
Yeah.
There's no reason to have a competition,
Right. Yeah.
You either do it right, you either do well or you don't do well, and nobody else is going to impact that.
Yeah. When people are getting into the rat race, they think, oh, you're competing for this one title, not to even think about that they themselves, just because they're adding their flavor to whatever it is they're doing, that in itself is almost its own separate title. And so nobody can compete with that. because no one can add your flair, your flavor to what it is that they're doing. Which is why I'm always an advocate for, if you're into astrology, get to know as many astrologers as you can, because not a single one of them are the same. Not a single one of them are going to give you the same exact reading. You're going to learn something new from every single one. Just like it's just like how you have different teachers throughout school, your school years. You have, that's the idea, is not
100%.
you have different teachers, because you're going to learn something from every single one of them, and it's going to be different. Not every teacher is going to be the same. Some are going to
not every teacher is going to be good.
Not every teacher is going to teach your learning style. Some, if the good ones, learn how to incorporate everyone, but I've had some that intentionally weaponize people against each other. Those fortunately have left the teaching field, I have heard. So that's good. But I would say that, I Arkansas isn't that big, but so kind of learn little things. Small town life is a real thing. So
yes, it is.
I would say though that it is really good to collaborate and learn from as many people as possible for those reasons. And who knows, maybe one of them will resonate with you in such a way as Laurie did with me, and inspire you to go on a completely new pathway in life that you never would have thought at one point that you would even known to exist. So
that's the coolest thing for me.
And so
it really is.
That is
to see your eyes light up and be like, I'm on this trajectory. And I'm like, that's awesome.
Because I'm like, originally I was on the pathway to being a teacher or a college professor.
But you can in lots of ways.
It's not my calling. I have learned through working with you that your calling and your career are very separate things. Astrology has also taught me that, because you do not see your calling and your career and how you do your daily grind in the same area of life.
No, and it can intertwine. It can intertwine, and it might take years for that to intersect, because you might be building all these other skill sets. And we put so much pressure on young people to have life figured out before your frontal cortex is even complete.
Yeah. I was asked to pick my major in 10th grade.
Yeah. Which is ridiculous. Because, even I did an accelerated degree. I did my degree in 2.5 years, and then I went on to graduate work, right? What I thought I was walking into, much like you said, I thought astrology, being a professional astrology, would look like this. And then I found out it was this, right? I had the same thing in my major. I went in with a very clear objective of what I wanted to accomplish. I knew by the time before I graduated, that my ideal of what I had gone to do was worthy, but it did not exist in the real world. And that I would have to compromise my very sense of humanity if I followed it. And I couldn't do that. if you think my principles are strong now, they were much stronger when I was young. And I went on other journeys, and your whole life is an exploration, and you are never done learning. You're never done growing. The people who are get old so fast. And if you can just stay open and understand, you're acquiring experiences every step of the way, and then you can synthesize and integrate. And you might be teaching and writing and speaking and being a professor. You might teach a myriad of subjects and weave them together. Life is a series of unfoldings. And so it's really fun to watch people get on their path and then go, oh, I could go off in the weeds for a while if I want. That's fine. You cannot do life wrong. You cannot. Except for playing it too safe.
That is true. And people don't realize that indecision is in itself a decision. So,
and we're all finding that out in 2025.
Yeah.
So follow your heart.
Yeah. So you can find Laurie Rivers at, is it still wokeastrology.com?
It is. It's wokeastrology.com. That keeps the megas away. And so wokeastrology.com.
I thought about naming my brand something like that too, but I was like, you know what? Yeah.
I wasn't sure I wanted to be public as an astrologer when I put up Woke Astrology. And I knew I didn't want megas. And so, and QAnoners specifically. So I named it something that would repel the people I didn't want to read for. It'll be changed to Awake Space Astrology. Because once I named it Woke, I was just excited. I got Woke Astrology as a URL. I was like, no way, that's cool. And then as I wrote, I was like, well, but it's the Awake Space. Now I have the laurieriVers.com. I can make my astrology stuff there too, but I go back and forth because I do more than one thing. So I do media production and things like that.
So for right now, you're at wokeastrology.com. And even though that will be a change in the future, you also have your Patreon that you are very active in. And it's a community of very also interested in astrology.
Amazing people. Yeah.
There's
people
a lot of cool
into astrology. Yeah. Lots of neat people. Yeah. People dedicated to community as well.
Yeah. Like,
which
and
is
it's a
very
community
awesome.
that, yes, there's astrology involved, but there's just a lot of really cool things. Like, there's literally a whole chat designated for gardening. Like, I find that really cool. Like, I'm not
because
one
everything
to
is
garden.
astrology.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I'm not one to garden. That's my mom's thing. She loves it. I don't like bugs outside. I don't like bugs inside. So I prefer plants inside. So, because that takes out the bugs and that takes out the outside. And so, inside. Because I love plants, just inside. What are some other things that you got coming up? Like readings-wise?
Readings-wise, I've consolidated all of my readings into one offering, which is Astrological Consult with Laurie. So whether you want a year ahead, where I go month by month and I look at it, or we're consulting on like a mom and pop business or a solopreneur business, I can do that. If you have an actual business, like you have 50 employees or more, you can take the business consulting package. Because I will know if you're lying to me, and then you will be invoiced. Because there's a big difference in budgets. So just, timing, you probably don't want to do a natal reading with me. I have natal readers on the website in January. That'll be Shelby and Damien, and you're friends with them.
I am. I'm really good friends with them, and I was so excited when you told me that they were going to be coming on, because I'm like, I know they would be perfect for that. And so, yeah.
And just so everybody's clear, I didn't ask Eli to read for me because, one, Eli had started his own business. And I know Eli's chart, and I knew he'd be happier on his own with a guide on the side to come ask questions to, because I knew he'd get bored reading for me.
Yeah. And I feel like most people who know me know very well that I do not do good with someone above me. At all.
I get it. I don't either. Yeah. So I do have strict parameters, but they're kind of no-brainer.
Yeah. But, like most of them are common sense.
But I knew you'd be happier. Yeah. So, no. So it wasn't because I don't think Eli's good. I think Eli's wonderful, but I knew you'd be happier doing your own thing, and I wanted to be a support in that way. So.
Yeah. Lots of my chart screams
independence.
Freedom. So, yeah.
You're very much an independent being. Absolutely.
Very.
But yeah.
Very much. Yeah. And so, thank you so much for coming on here. You can find Laurie Rivers again at wokeastrology.com, and definitely go join her Patreon. There's a lot of really cool stuff in there. And
there's a ton of resources. There's a ton of things.
Oh, yes. Yeah. There's so much good stuff in there. But yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Once again, big thanks for Laurie Rivers for being able to have this conversation here on In the Stars with Eli Gomez. I also would like to mention that if you would like to book a natal chart reading, they are $225.95. The link is in the show notes. I do have some availability, so make sure you go snag those while you can, because there's only limited spots. Also, I put Laurie's links below if you would like to go check her out as well. Again, stay warm or stay cool if you're in the southern hemisphere. I know we got listeners there too. So didn't forget about y'all. And have a great rest of your week or start of your week, depending on when you're listening to this. And I will see you all tomorrow.